All right, let's get into that breaking news I mentioned at the top of the show. This afternoon, the Victorian government announced a Royal Commission into Crown Resort's suitability to hold a casino licence in Victoria. It follows, of course, the damning review into the gambling giant in New South Wales that found it was unsuitable to hold a licence in New South Wales, so Barangaroo, in a casino sense, has not yet occurred. This statement today from the Premier in relation to the Royal Commission says this is about making sure those who hold a casino licence in Victoria are highest standards of probity and integrity, so he says, and are accountable for their actions. Well, for more on this, from Melbourne, Sky News host Rita Panahi, and also here with me, Executive Director of the Institute for Public Affairs, John Roskham. John, I want to start with you. What's the definition of hypocrisy?
Oh, hello, Peter. As a Melburnian, the idea that Dan Andrews is going to talk to anyone about accountability, I find incredible. We're not going to have a Royal Commission into 800 dead people as a result of the government's actions. We're not going to have a Royal Commission into small business on its knees. We're going to have a Royal Commission again into a casino. This is another example of Dan Andrews shoving responsibility, shoving accountability, and taking Victorians really for granted, as we've talked about.
Rita, I might make the point, one of the failures of Hotel Quarantine Mark 1, with all the public health infrastructure and the spending, the funding had been wound back over many years. Of course, Daniel Andrews was a former health minister. He was also a former gaming minister.
Yeah, this has all happened under his nose right here in Victoria, and yet it took this inquiry in New South Wales for them to realise, oops, we might have an issue here, let's call a Royal Commission. I just wonder what sort of findings we would have if we had the Royal Commission, the individuals who ran that in New South Wales, in charge of the whitewash inquiry we had down here, because as we know, nothing was really discovered. We had every minister and the Premier himself and senior bureaucrats show up and say, I don't know, I can't remember, I don't know who made these key decisions, and after all that expenditure, we're none the wiser on what actually happened.
Yeah, but the difference here is this is a public company under the gun, right? Let them all front a Royal Commission and have to answer questions and provide all their documentation. But when it relates to the government, they have these sort of whitewash exercises that have none of the powers of a Royal Commission, because they're all the ones having to front and provide or not provide, in the case, the answers in the papers. That's a big difference. The other Royal Commission too, of course, was Kevin Rudd's push on Friday for a Royal Commission into media diversity, but basically the Murdoch media. That's gone down in flames today. The Morrison government says it will not recommend to the Governor-General that there is one. Of course, it's up to the Governor-General, via the Queen, of course, to establish a Royal Commission letters patent. But I have to go to that performance of Rudd in the Senate committee on Friday. It's all the reasons of the Murdoch conspiracy, the Murdoch beast. He says, I think his words were that he was fearful of the Murdoch media beast during his time in the Lodge. That's what's brought him down. Let's have a listen.
As Prime Minister, I was still fearful of the Murdoch media beast. I believe the way in which the Murdoch media publicly depicted my successor, Julia Gillard, was particularly venomous. But when I look at Prime Minister Gillard's period in office, there was an additional dimension to it, which bordered on misogyny. The question is that, Senator, a piece of objective news reporting, or is that simply a piece of editorial opinion?
Rita Panahi, I'll go to you on the issue of the misogyny so alleged there from Kevin Rudd. But John, holding up a front page like that in a state that had 800 dead, I do think that's objective journalism.
I think it is too, Peter, and I watched about an hour of Kevin Rudd's appearance at the Senate inquiry. That's an hour of my life I'm never going to get back. Where do you begin with we were just talking about hypocrisy. Where do you begin with the hypocrisy and double standards when it relates to Kevin Rudd? And you're going to talk to Rita about misogyny, but I tell you what, I don't think anything was reported in the papers that it goes anywhere near what Kevin Rudd is reported to have said in private about Julia Gillard.
I remember that year, Rita, the top of 2013, when Julia Gillard was removed and Rudd went through, as you know, to the election in 2013. And there was just this conga line of Labor front benches who turned up on Sky. There was this revolving seat there for a couple of hours where they all just ventilated their anger and concern and refused to serve under Kevin Rudd if he became PM again. Of course, he did. But when he talked about sexism and misogyny in relation to Julia Gillard, I tell you, I'm no great fan of Twitter, but Twitter exploded and called him out. You know, you are not sunshine and light there. You have a long history, Kevin Rudd. This is extraordinary, though, wasn't it? It was such a display of vintage
It
Rudd.
is just pure chutzpah, weapon-grade chutzpah, our Jewish friends would say. Just the nerve of the bloke to even go there. This is a bloke who we all know undermined Julia Gillard every step of the way. The language he used to speak about her to his favoured journos and some that he's fallen out with since was reprehensible. So for him to come in and play the knight in shining armour and be concerned about how Julia Gillard was treated apparently by the misogynistic Murdoch media is bordering on lunacy. It really is. It is just the delusional ravings of a man who is desperate to have some sort of relevance and have some sort of presence in public life. He should actually take a leaf out of Julia Gillard's book and John Howard and Tony Abbott and conduct himself with a little bit of dignity and stop trashing whatever's left of his legacy as Prime Minister.
I want to just go to this one before we go, John, and I don't want it to be missed because I think it's been underreported. But late last week, the bill to extend Victoria's state of emergency all the way through till December was rammed through the lower house by the Premier. Now, the Liberal opposition opposed it. It will now go to the upper house, and there's a whole lot of deal-making we've seen there in the past by the old sex party now called the Reason Party, led by Fiona Patten. With the vaccines coming out today, the idea that Victoria needs a state of emergency until December is extraordinary.
Peter, it's exactly as you said to Professor Collignon. We don't need this. It needs to be opposed in the strongest possible terms. We can't have these open again, shut down again lockdowns, and there's no reason why Victoria needs this. It's not good for Victoria or Australia.
All right, we're going to stay across that legislation to see what happens in the upper house. But given the deal-making and the payoffs that happened before, I'm not confident that it will be withdrawn. All right, leave it there. Rita Penny, John Roskham, thank you for your time.